"What the hell are you doing in his room?" Gregory Hunter's voice cracked through the air like a whip. Maya Williams froze, kneeling on the carpet with the 2-year-old boy in her arms. Her voice trembled. "Please, sir. He was hurting himself. I was only trying to help." "I gave strict orders," Gregory barked, stepping closer. "You don't go near my son. You don't touch him. You don't speak to him. Are those instructions too complicated for you?" Maya's heart pounded. A few minutes earlier, she had heard the sound soft at first, then wild and sharp, the sound of a child breaking. Jacob had been in a fit again. The walls had echoed with his small fists hitting the crib, his horse crying, the thuds of thrown toys. The housekeeper, Mrs. Blake, was downstairs and hadn't heard. Maya dropped her cleaning rag and ran. When she entered, Jacob was crouched in the corner, rocking back and forth, eyes wide, his little fingers digging into his own hair. She had seen this before with her younger brother Isaiah, years ago, when his world tilted out of control. So she did what she had once done then. She sat on the floor, slow and quiet, and told a story. "There was a little boy who lost his way," she whispered, her voice trembling but gentle. "He looked for his mom every night in the stars. Sometimes, when he closed his eyes, he could still feel her hug him." The boy's cries softened into hiccups. His eyes, wet and vacant, found hers. Maya smiled through the ache in her chest. "You miss your mama, don't you?" Jacob blinked, as if the words reached him in a language he almost remembered. Then, cautiously, he touched her cheek, small, trembling fingers tracing her skin. It was the first time anyone in the house had seen him touch another human being without panic. And that was the exact moment Gregory Hunter stormed in. Now, the boy was calm and half asleep against her shoulder. But Gregory's anger filled the room like fire. "Put him down," he shouted. "You're lucky he didn't hurt you. You think this is some kind of charity?" Maya shook her head, still holding Jacob. "He wasn't angry, sir. He was scared. He was remembering his mother. Enough." Gregory's voice cut through her plea. "You think you can psychoanalyze my son because you've cleaned a few houses? Do you have any idea how dangerous this is?" "He just needed someone to stay," she whispered. "You're done here. Get your things and leave." The words hit her harder than any slap could. "Please, Mr. Hunter," she said quickly, desperate now. "I need this job. I can't go back home empty-handed. Please don't fire me. I swear I didn't mean any harm. He needed someone, that's all." Gregory turned away, jaw tight, refusing to look at her. "You had no right to touch him. Security will handle your paperwork." Maya's eyes stung. She lowered Jacob into his crib, careful not to wake him. He shifted, clutching the blanket she'd tucked around him, his tiny face peaceful for the first time in months. She brushed a tear from her cheek before speaking again. "I know you think you're protecting him," she said softly. "But sometimes walls don't keep people safe, they just make the house colder." Gregory froze for half a second but didn't turn. "Get out," he muttered. Maya stepped past him, her head low. Mrs. Blake stood at the end of the hallway, watching in silence, wringing her apron. As Maya walked by, the older woman caught her arm gently. "He's not a bad man," she whispered. "He just hasn't forgiven the world yet." Maya nodded, unable to speak. She walked down the long marble staircase, her footsteps echoing in the emptiness. Gregory stayed behind. The door clicked shut behind her. And for the first time in hours, the house was quiet again. He exhaled, rubbing his temples. Jacob slept, thumb tucked against his lips, his small chest rising and falling steadily. The boy hadn't slept without medication in weeks. Wait, before we continue, if this story touched your heart, please hit subscribe. It truly encourages us to bring you more powerful stories. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know our amazing viewers around the world. Gregory stared at him, disbelief and guilt twisting inside his chest. He walked closer, lowering himself to the carpet. There were scratches on the wall, tiny crescents from Jacob's fingernails and broken crayons scattered like forgotten thoughts. He reached out to pick up one of the blue ones. On the paper beside it was a shaky circle, scribbled through. In the corner, a faint smudge like the shape of a woman's handprint. He swallowed hard. Maya's words replayed in his mind. He was remembering his mother. Gregory shut his eyes. The image of Anna, his wife, her laughter, the way she'd hum lullabies flashed behind his eyelids. She'd died when Jacob was 6 months old, when their private plane went down over the Rockies. Only Jacob survived. Gregory had built his fortune by controlling chaos, by predicting every possible variable. But grief was the one algorithm he couldn't solve. Now, a stranger had walked in, touched that chaos, and calmed it. He looked back at his son. For the first time in nearly a year, Jacob's face was peaceful. The boy's fingers twitched, as if searching for the warmth that had just left the room. Gregory sat there for a long time, staring at him. He didn't know whether he was more angry at Maya or at himself. Downstairs, Maya waited in the kitchen, clutching her canvas bag. "Mrs." Blake approached quietly with an envelope. "He says you'll be paid for the full week." Maya blinked back tears. "I don't want his money. I just wanted to help." The older woman sighed. "Sometimes men like Mr. Hunter don't know the difference between help and pity. But I saw what you did up there. That boy hasn't been that quiet since the funeral." Maya nodded faintly. "He's not broken," she said. "He's just scared." Mrs. Blake smiled sadly. "And so is his father." Maya turned toward the door, pausing only once. "If he ever lets someone stay long enough to listen," she said softly, "tell him Jacob's trying to speak. He just doesn't have words yet." Outside, the cold Connecticut air bit her cheeks. The mansion stood tall and silent behind her, its windows glinting like distant eyes. Somewhere inside, a little boy was dreaming, and a man was realizing too late that the first warmth in his house in years had just walked out the front door. Inside the nursery, Jacob stirred, murmuring softly in his sleep, a sound no one heard but the walls themselves. The mansion was quieter than usual the next morning, as if it, too, held its breath after the storm from the day before. Pale October sunlight crept through the high-arched windows, painting streaks of amber across the hardwood floors. Even the walls seemed to retreat into stillness. No footsteps, no voices, only the occasional groan of old wood settling into silence. Gregory Hunter sat alone at the long dining table, a steaming cup of black coffee in his hand. He hadn't slept much, though his bedroom was on the opposite end of the house. His thoughts had been held hostage all night by the image of his son curled against that woman's chest, peaceful, trusting, unafraid. Across from him, a single high chair remained untouched. No breakfast had been served. No one had dared bring it up. Not after what happened. He'd meant to call someone, the agency, maybe, to explain what had occurred. But when he sat at his desk and stared at Maya Williams' file, he found himself doing nothing. Her file was thin. No formal child development training. No college degree, just years of experience in homes like this one, though none quite so cold. Gregory sipped his coffee, staring into the backyard through the tall glass doors. The maple trees were turning crimson. Jacob loved that color. Or, rather, he reacted to it. Sometimes with quiet fascination, other times with screams. He hadn't screamed when Maya held him. He hadn't screamed when she whispered to him. That detail clung to Gregory like a burr under his skin. "Sir?" Mrs. Blake's voice was soft as always, but not apologetic. "Would you like some eggs this morning?" "No," he said, still watching the trees. "She left early. Didn't even wait for the agency car," the older woman added after a moment. Gregory nodded slightly, not answering. The memory of Maya's eyes, full of fear and quiet defiance, came back. Her words echoed faintly. "He's not broken, he's just scared." It had angered him at the time. Now, it just stayed. "He didn't wake last night," Mrs. Blake said. "First time in 3 weeks." Gregory turned toward her slowly. "You're certain?" She nodded. "I checked on him at 2. Still asleep." Hand clutched the corner of her scarf. Gregory said nothing. His chest tightened. He hated how much weight her absence seemed to carry, how much his son had noticed. Mrs. Blake cleared her throat gently. "Sir, I don't mean to overstep, but you should know when Miss Williams left, she didn't take the money. The envelope's still on the counter." That gave him pause. "She didn't?" "No, sir. Said something about not taking money for trying to do the right thing." Gregory looked down at the untouched breakfast place in front of the high chair. The silver spoon gleamed under the morning light. He hadn't noticed it was there. Mrs. Blake had set it, as she always did, out of habit. A bitter smile touched his lips. Habit was stronger than truth. Jacob cried again at 8:15, right on schedule. Gregory stood and walked upstairs for the first time in weeks. He usually let the nannies or Mrs. Blake handle it. He wasn't good at comforting. Wasn't good at anything that required warmth. But now, for reasons he didn't yet understand, he walked. Jacob sat in the middle of his crib, blanket tangled around his legs, face flushed from screaming. His fists pounded against the rails, not hard, but with a steady rhythm, his way of expressing confusion, of trying to regulate himself. Gregory froze in the doorway. The room still held a faint trace of lavender. Maya's touch hadn't left yet. He stepped closer, slowly, trying not to trigger the boy. "Jacob," he said quietly, unsure of what would happen. The child turned his head. No smile, no fear, just wide, alert eyes. Gregory raised a hand instinctively, unsure of what he meant to do. Jacob's gaze followed the motion, but he didn't flinch. "Not yet. Daddy's here," Gregory murmured. The words sounded foreign, rusty. Jacob's eyes shifted. Then, without warning, he lifted one hand and touched the blanket near him. His little fingers wrapped around a corner of blue fabric, Maya's old cleaning cloth. He brought it to his cheek and closed his eyes. Gregory watched as his son rocked gently, breathing slowing. The tantrum passed not with medicine, not with music, not with distraction, but with memory. The cloth smelled like her. He stayed there for minutes, maybe longer, watching his son hold on to the only thing that reminded him of the woman who hadn't been afraid to stay. That afternoon, Gregory went back to his study. The room was immaculate, untouched. The smell of old paper and leather-bound contracts clung to the air. His desk was polished, his laptop open, but he couldn't concentrate. He pulled Maya's file again and flipped it open. There were no references from elite families. No recommendations from early childhood centers. Just a note from a family in Macon, Georgia. She was the only one our boy would sleep next to. "No." Gregory exhaled and leaned back. He remembered once, long ago, when Anna was alive, she'd said, "Children don't respond to credentials. They respond to connection." And what had he done? He'd thrown that connection out the door. He ran his fingers through his hair and stood, pacing. He didn't know what he was going to do, but for the first time in months, he knew what he shouldn't have done. At the agency's downtown office, Maya sat in the waiting room, shoulders stiff, lips pressed tight. If you're still here and enjoying the story, we'd love your support. Take a second to hit subscribe. It really means a lot. She wore the same navy sweater she'd worn the day before, now creased and clinging to the scent of antiseptic cleaner. The manager hadn't called her in yet. A middle-aged man in a striped tie was filling out paperwork nearby. She tried not to look nervous, but it was impossible. This was her last shot. One more termination, and she wouldn't be placed again, not in Fairfield County. She had $47 to her name. Rent was due in 6 days. She wanted to cry but refused. The receptionist approached. "Miss Williams?" Maya stood, smoothed her skirt, and followed. As she passed the lobby window, her eyes caught a familiar car parked outside. A black Lincoln Continental. The one she remembered seeing from the upstairs window of the mansion. Gregory Hunter sat inside, unmoving, staring straight ahead like a man facing a boardroom full of judgment. Her steps faltered. He looked up, and their eyes met. If you felt for Maya or Gregory, hit like and comment where you're watching from. You might find someone nearby feeling the same. The door to the agency's waiting room creaked softly as Maya stepped out, her heart pounding like the bass line of a song she didn't want to dance to. Her hands gripped the strap of her worn canvas bag as she stared at the black Lincoln idling at the curb. The windows were slightly tinted, but she could see him clearly, Gregory Hunter, sitting in the driver's seat, both hands on the wheel as if he were still deciding whether to turn the key and drive away. She took a breath and walked, not toward the car but past it. She couldn't afford hope. Not now. Not after everything. Not when eviction was 3 weeks away, and her fridge at home held 2 apples, a half stick of butter, and prayers. But the window rolled down. Maya, Uh, his voice was quieter than it had been in the hallway, almost hesitant, no longer razor sharp, but frayed at the edges. She paused but didn't look at him. Sir, if you're here to finish yesterday's lecture, I'd rather you not. I'm not. He cleared his throat. I came to talk. Maya turned her head slightly. Talk, or explain why I was fired for comforting a crying child. His jaw tightened. I made a mistake. That was new. She turned fully now, arms crossed. You made a decision, Mr. Hunter. Not a mistake. He sighed and opened the door. Will you get in the car? I have a bus pass. I'll drive you home, he said, trying to sound firm, but the note of guilt in his voice cracked through the authority. She studied him, then nodded once. I don't live in Greenwich. That a problem? Not at all. She climbed in. The interior smelled like leather and some kind of expensive cologne that clung to the seats like old money. The silence between them stretched thin as Gregory pulled into traffic. I didn't know, he said finally, eyes on the road. Didn't know what? That he calmed down because of you. I thought, he faltered, gripping the wheel. I thought you'd startled him, that you were another stranger, ignoring instructions. And when I said he was scared, not dangerous, I didn't listen. Maya looked out the window, jaw tight. He wasn't trying to lash out. He was asking for help. Children with trauma don't always have the words. Gregory nodded slowly, eyes heavy with something between shame and awakening. He held your scarf while he slept last night. That caught her off guard. He did? He hasn't done that with anyone. Not even me. Silence. The trees blurred past, golden and tired from the season. Gregory glanced at her. I know I don't have the right to ask anything of you, but I'm asking now. Will you come back? Maya exhaled. For how long? Until the next misunderstanding, or until a neighbor takes a photo and sends it to a gossip site. You'll have a contract, full protection, no overstepping boundaries. I'll make it right. Maya hesitated. I don't care about contracts. What do you care about? She met his gaze then. That little boy in the blue pajamas who looked at me like I was the first thing in his world that made sense. He said nothing for a while. The car moved in silence through the narrow streets of her neighborhood. When they reached her building, a modest 3-story complex with peeling paint and a porch swing held together by hope and rust, she turned to him. You can come in, she said, but only if you're ready to stop managing your son like an asset and start seeing him as a child. Gregory nodded. That's fair. Inside her apartment, the scent of vanilla candles lingered in the air, blending with lemon cleaner and laundry soap. Maya's kitchen was small but spotless, the living room tidy with a stack of library books on the coffee table. He stood awkwardly near the door, too tall for the space. I wasn't expecting a visit, she said, half a joke, half a warning. I wasn't expecting to make one, he replied. She poured him a glass of water from a ceramic pitcher. No bottled water, no ice cubes, just water, like real people drink it. Gregory looked around, eyes catching on a photograph on the shelf. A boy, about 7, with bright eyes and the same high cheekbones as Maya. Your brother? She nodded. Isaiah. Where is he now? Gone, she said softly. Car accident. 2 years ago. I raised him from when he was 5. He had sensory issues. Sound, texture, even hugs, everything overwhelmed him. But he loved bedtime stories. And peanut butter. Gregory's throat tightened. I'm sorry. So am I. He took a sip of the water. It felt heavier than wine. You looked at Jacob yesterday, Maya said, but I don't think you saw him. He frowned. What do you mean? You saw a liability. A problem. A child who embarrassed you. But what I saw was a boy grieving. Not just for his mother, but for connection. He was trying to find someone who wouldn't flinch when he screamed. Gregory's hands curled slightly on the glass. You flinched, didn't you? She added gently. Yes, he admitted. I did. Maya sat across from him. Then let me come back. Not as a maid, not as a nanny, just as someone who understands. He studied her for a long moment. Agreed. They shook hands, but the gesture felt heavier than formality. It felt like the first stone in rebuilding something broken. That evening, back at the mansion, the air shifted the moment Maya stepped through the door. Mrs. Blake's eyes widened. Back so soon? The housekeeper asked. Maya smiled softly. He asked nicely this time. Gregory entered a moment later, coat folded over his arm. Let her settle in, and tell the agency she's not temporary anymore. Mrs. Blake nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Upstairs, Jacob was still asleep. Gregory paused at the doorway to his son's room, then motioned for Maya to go first. She stepped in quietly. Jacob stirred, then opened his eyes. When he saw her, he didn't cry. He smiled. The rain came quietly that night, tapping against the tall windows of the Hunter mansion like hesitant knuckles. The storm outside made the house feel smaller, almost human. Gregory stood in his study, sleeves rolled up, staring at a photo he kept on the bookshelf, Anna holding baby Jacob in her arms. Her smile was wide, her hair caught in sunlight, her fingers brushing the baby's cheek. He hadn't looked at that photo in nearly a year. He wasn't ready to, until now. Down the hall, he could hear Maya humming softly. It wasn't a melody. He recognized something simple, something southern, like the songs his grandmother used to hum while making cornbread on Sundays. He hadn't realized how much he'd missed that sound, human warmth threading through the silence of money. He placed the photo down, exhaled, and walked toward Jacob's room. Maya sat beside the bed, her head bent low, whispering a story. The small bedside lamp wrapped her in soft gold light. Jacob's small hand clutched her sleeve while his eyelids fluttered with the slow rhythm of sleep. Gregory leaned against the doorframe. You've done in one day what 15 professionals couldn't do in a year, he said quietly. Maya looked up, surprised. Children don't need professionals, Mr. Hunter. They need presence. Her tone wasn't arrogant. It was steady, almost gentle, as though she were simply stating the weather. He nodded slowly. Presence, he repeated. That's not something I've been good at. You're here now, she said, smoothing Jacob's hair. I'm standing in a doorway, he replied. Maya's eyes flicked to him, the hint of a smile touching her lips. Then that's where it starts. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The hum of the rain filled the pause. Gregory's eyes softened as he watched Jacob's chest rise and fall. Small and steady. Good night, Mr. Hunter, she said finally. He wanted to leave. Instead, he asked, what happened to your wrist? Maya blinked, following his gaze. The sleeve of her cardigan had slipped back, revealing a faint white scar crossing her skin like a faded thread. She pulled the fabric down slowly. It's old, she said. From when I was about 14. Gregory didn't move. An accident? Maya hesitated. Then, softly, a mirror. My brother was having a meltdown. He broke it, and I tried to stop him. Glass doesn't care who's right. It cuts anyway. Her words lingered in the air, sharp but not self-pitying. Your brother Isaiah? He asked. She nodded. He used to hit his head against the wall when the world got too loud. Doctors said he might never talk. He proved them wrong. He talked, sang, laughed, until one night he didn't make it home. I'm sorry, Gregory said, his voice keyeder now. Don't be, Maya said. He taught me more about love than anyone else. Even when it hurt. Gregory glanced toward his son. Jacob's like him. No. Yes, she said softly. And no. Every child's different, but they all feel when someone gives up on them. That struck deeper than she knew. Gregory's jaw tightened as he looked at his boy. I never gave up. Maya didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence between them was thick enough to tell the truth. He ran a hand through his hair, stepping back from the doorway. If you need anything for him, equipment, toys, therapy, just tell Mrs. Blake. Oh, what he needs, Maya said, can't be ordered from a catalog. He almost smiled. Almost. You're not afraid to tell me when I'm wrong. I learned not to be afraid of truth a long time ago, she said. He studied her for a moment longer before leaving. As he walked back to his study, he glanced again at the photo of Anna and Jacob. Her eyes warm, forgiving, seemed to look through him. For the first time, he whispered aloud, I'm trying, Anna. He poured himself a glass of scotch but didn't drink it. The echo of Maya's voice lingered in his head. He just needed someone to stay. The next morning, Maya rose before dawn. The sky was still gray-blue, the kind of color that feels like a held breath. She brewed coffee in the kitchen. The smell waking Mrs. Blake before the alarm did. "Morning, child," the old housekeeper said, tying her robe. "You didn't have to start breakfast this early." Maya smiled. "Old habit. My grandma used to say the day listens better when it starts with kindness." Mrs. Blake chuckled. "I like her already." They worked in easy silence, pancakes, bacon, sliced apples for Jacob. By the time Gregory came downstairs, the table was set. He paused at the sight of it, clearly unused to such domestic peace. "Smells like something my mother used to make," he said. "Then you'll eat," Maya said, "and so will Jacob." Gregory almost laughed. "Almost. You're very sure of yourself." "That I have to be," she said lightly. "The world doesn't listen to quiet women." Jacob toddled in just then, bare feet on marble, hair mussed. He clutched his blanket like a shield but didn't cry. Maya crouched to his level. "Good morning, sunshine," she said softly. He blinked, then Miracle of Miracles nodded. A single nod, small but deliberate. Gregory's eyes widened slightly. He'd never seen his son respond to a greeting. Mrs. Blake wiped her eyes with the corner of her apron. "Lord above," she whispered. Jacob reached up, tugged Maya's sleeve, and pressed his little palm to her wrist right over the faded scar. She froze for a heartbeat, then smiled and covered his hand with hers. "See," she murmured. "Scars don't scare me, Jacob." The boy's lips parted, forming a faint sound. It wasn't a word, not yet, but it was something. Gregory looked at them, then down at his own hands used to building companies. Not moments like this. And for the first time, he wondered if he'd been building the wrong kind of legacy all along. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall living room windows, laying long golden stripes across the Persian rug. The mansion, once sterile and cavernous, now held a faint trace of life, quiet, tentative, like a song slowly finding its melody. Gregory Hunter sat on the leather couch, a legal brief open in front of him but untouched. His gaze drifted toward the hallway where Jacob's voice, a soft, babbling hum, could be heard. Not words, not yet, but sounds. Sounds that didn't involve screaming, scratching, or silence. Just breath and rhythm and presence. He looked at his watch. 3:04 p.m. The time of day that once meant tantrums, broken toys, and emergency calls to behavioral specialists. Today, it was just normal, or something close to it. Maya's voice floated from the other room, gentle, measured, layered with patience. "That's it, baby. One foot at a time. No rush." Her accent carried warmth, a lilt that curled around the vowels and made Jacob's name sound like music. Gregory stood and followed the sound. He paused at the doorway of the playroom, where the carpet was covered in puzzle pieces, crayon drawings, and a half-finished paper airplane. Jacob stood a few feet away from Maya, wobbling slightly, arms extended for balance. She was crouched low, palms open, waiting. "You've got this," she said softly. The little boy took a hesitant step, then another. When he reached her, he stumbled not into panic or fear but into her arms. Maya caught him, held him close. "Good job, baby. You're getting brave." Jacob smiled, a real one this time, and then, slowly, raised one small hand and touched her cheek. Gregory's breath caught in his throat. The gesture was so simple, so impossibly intimate. That same hand had clawed at nurses, yanked hair, left welts on arms. But now, it was soft. It was searching. It was remembering safety. Maya looked up and saw Gregory in the doorway. Her cheeks flushed, but she didn't speak. She just kept holding the boy, who now rested his forehead against her shoulder. Gregory stepped into the room, clearing his throat. "He seems calm." Maya smiled faintly. "He's figuring things out." "How?" he asked, more honest than skeptical. She stood, still holding Jacob. "Because I don't try to fix him. I meet him where he is. Some days that's here," she said, tapping her shoulder, "and some days that's under the table." Gregory folded his arms. "Is that what you did with your brother?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I used to think progress was measured in words, but it's really measured in trust." Jacob, still leaning against her, pointed a tiny finger toward the couch. "Duh," Gregory frowned. "Did he just say, He's trying, Maya said quickly. Sometimes syllables come out like pieces of a puzzle. You'll hear them if you listen enough. Gregory felt something stir in his chest, a mixture of awe and sadness. He crouched to Jacob's level. Hey, buddy. Jacob looked at him. Didn't flinch. Gregory extended his hand, slowly. Can I sit with you? Jacob blinked, then without instruction walked toward him. Just 3 steps, but they hit Gregory harder than any boardroom victory ever had. Jacob touched his father's hand, then plopped down on the rug, grabbing a nearby crayon. Gregory looked at Maya. Did you teach him that? No, she said gently. He just decided he wanted to try. Gregory sat beside his son. The boy scribbled on a sheet of paper, humming softly. A green scribble. Then blue. Then a crooked circle. Maya crouched nearby, observing with calm eyes. That circle? That's how he draws people. He hasn't tried that in weeks. Gregory looked at the page. A lopsided shape, with 2 dots for eyes. He drew me once, Maya added. Just my cheek. He said it smelled like cinnamon. Gregory smiled an actual smile. You do make the kitchen smell like cinnamon. Guilty. They sat like that for a while, the 3 of them, beneath the slow-turning ceiling fan, surrounded by broken crayons and paper scraps. Later that evening, Maya stood by the kitchen window drying dishes. The view looked out over the back garden, neatly trimmed hedges, stone path, a wrought iron bench where no one ever Saturday. She imagined how different it must have looked when Anna was alive. Maybe they'd had dinner outside. Maybe there had been laughter. Gregory entered quietly, still in his button-down shirt, sleeves rolled. He's asleep. Maya nodded. Peacefully? Yes, and holding the paper with the circle on it. She smiled. He's keeping track. Every day that feels safe. He draws something. Gregory leaned against the counter. When do you draw? She blinked, surprised by the question. Me? Yeah. You take care of everyone else. When do you take care of you? Maya turned to face him. I used to draw, before things got hard. Now I write notes in my phone I never send. Mostly to Isaiah. Things I'd say if he were still here. Gregory studied her. What would you tell him about today? She looked down, drying her hands on a towel. That I watched a little boy try to speak. And that for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Gregory nodded slowly. You do. No. That caught her off guard. What? You belong here, Maya. She laughed softly, trying to shake off the lump in her throat. Careful, Mr. Hunter. That sounds dangerously close to kindness. He met her eyes. It's not kindness. It's truth. She swallowed, turning back to the sink. Truth can be heavy. I'm getting used to carrying heavy things. Their eyes met again, and for a long moment, neither of them looked away. Then Jacob cried faintly from upstairs just once. Maya moved quickly, but Gregory raised a hand. I've got this. She paused. I want to try, he said. She nodded. Okay. Just remember, it's not about fixing. It's about staying. Gregory left the room, the sound of his footsteps steady. Maya leaned back against the counter, closed her eyes, and let herself smile. Not the kind born from politeness, but from something deeper. The kind that said maybe, just maybe, the house was learning how to breathe again. The next morning began with rain. Not the harsh, unforgiving kind, but a gentle drizzle soft as a sigh tapping on the glass panels of the conservatory like it was asking for permission to enter. The mansion, wrapped in mist, seemed to exhale, as if the walls themselves had begun to let go of whatever they'd been holding onto for so long. Maya stood by the kitchen island, quietly brewing tea. Not the fancy imported kind from the Hunter pantry, but a small tin of loose-leaf chamomile she had brought from home. A comfort blend, one she used to make for Isaiah on nights he couldn't sleep. She measured it slowly, with reverence. Healing, she'd learned, came not only from grand gestures but from rituals, a hot cup, a soft voice, a safe room. Mrs. Blake entered, her slippers muffled against the tile. You're up early again, dear. Couldn't sleep, Maya replied. Too quiet. Mrs. Blake gave her a knowing look. That kind of quiet's a blessing around here. You should enjoy it. Huh. I do, Maya said, pouring the tea into a ceramic mug. But sometimes quiet reminds you of all the things that aren't being said. Mrs. Blake hummed in agreement, reaching for a banana and her crossword. Truer words never spoken. Maya was stirring in honey when she felt his presence. Gregory stood in the doorway, hair slightly tousled, sleeves rolled up, shirt untucked. He looked almost human. "You're making tea?" he asked, not hiding his surprise. "I was," she replied. "Would you like a cup?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." She poured him a mug and handed it over. Their fingers brushed. Neither of them said anything about it. He took a sip, eyebrows raised. "Chamomile? With a little lavender. Calms the nervous system," she said, "and people who mistake control for peace." Gregory chuckled, the sound low and genuine. "You're not going to make this easy, are you?" "No," she said, looking him square in the eye. "I'm going to make it real." He took another sip, watching her over the rim. Jacob's still asleep. "That's a good sign." "Is it?" he asked, more to himself than to her. "Sometimes I wonder if the peace means progress or just exhaustion." Maya leaned against the counter, folding her arms. "You're used to results, Mr. Hunter. That's your world inputs, outputs, projections. But children, especially ones like Jacob, don't move on schedules. They move on trust." He nodded slowly, setting his cup down. "It's hard to know what's right, what to do. Especially when every expert you hire says something different." "Expert don't raise children," she said. "People do." He looked at her for a long moment. "Do you ever resent having to be the person who always shows up?" The question caught her off guard. She blinked. "I used to. When I was younger. When I thought showing up was all there was. But now," she shrugged, "now I know it's where everything begins." Gregory stepped closer, hands in his pockets. "I wanted to show you something. If you have a moment." She glanced toward the hallway. The monitor light from Jacob's room glowed green. He was still asleep. "I have a moment," she said. He led her through the hallway into his private study, a room Maya hadn't entered yet. It was grand, lined with books, awards, plaques. But it wasn't those things that caught her attention. It was the wall behind his desk. Photos, black and white, sepia-toned, full color, all of Anna. One with her holding Jacob in the hospital, smiling with tired, glowing eyes. Another on a boat, her hair tangled in wind. A third, framed larger than the rest, of her playing the piano mid-laugh, her fingers frozen above the keys. Maya stopped. She was beautiful. She was everything, Gregory said, voice thin. And then, one day, she wasn't. Maya turned to him, eyes soft. "You never moved her pictures." "I couldn't." He exhaled. "For months, I told myself it was because I didn't want Jacob to forget her. But truth is, I was the one who couldn't let go." She stepped closer, gently touching the frame of the hospital photo. "You don't have to let go to move forward. You just have to stop walking backward." Gregory looked at her, something deep in his chest pulling taut. "Do you believe in second chances?" "Yes," she said. "But only if you stop wasting the first one." He nodded slowly. "I've wasted a lot." "Oh." She met his gaze. "Then stop." For a moment, the silence between them wasn't empty. It was full, charged. Gregory gestured toward the photo. "Jacob never smiles like that. Not with me. I keep thinking, what if I missed something? What if I just don't know how to be a father?" Maya's voice was gentle. "There's no such thing as knowing how. There's only showing up. Over and over. Even when it's hard. Especially then." He exhaled, rubbed the back of his neck. "Anna used to say that. She always knew when I was hiding behind work. Women like her usually do," Maya said softly. They stood there for another beat before she stepped back. "I should check on him." Gregory nodded. "Of course." She walked to the doorway, paused, and turned. "Thank you for showing me this. Thank you for not pretending it didn't matter," he replied. She left the room, the smell of chamomile and lavender still lingering in the air. Jacob was stirring when Maya entered the nursery. His eyes blinked open slowly, lashes fluttering like wings. When he saw her, he reached out, no words, no sounds, just that familiar gesture. His hand touched her wrist. Maya leaned down and pressed her forehead to his. "Morning, sunshine." He smiled, small, crooked, real. She sat beside him on the bed, humming that same old lullaby, knowing that whatever came next, this moment, this connection was where everything truly began. The Hunter estate rarely saw visitors without appointment. The long gravel drive, the high iron gates, the silent security cameras tucked beneath the ivy, it all sent a message: this is private, stay out. But that Friday morning, just as the staff were settling into their routines, the front intercom crackled to life. Mrs. Blake frowned, wiping her hands on her apron before answering. Yes? A male voice came through, low and smooth. Delivery. For Miss Williams. Mrs. Blake's brow furrowed. Miss Williams? What kind of delivery? A personal item. She'll recognize it. From the hallway, Maya looked up from tying Jacob's shoelaces. Did he say it was for me? Yes, Mrs. Blake called back, wary. Gregory, who had just stepped into the foyer with a phone pressed to his ear, paused when he heard Maya's name. Send a camera check, he said to Mrs. Blake. Don't open the gate yet. Mrs. Blake nodded and tapped the screen. A small monitor blinked on. A man stood outside the gate, leaning casually against a gray sedan. He wore a leather jacket and aviator sunglasses, a baseball cap pulled low over his forehead. He held a flat, carefully wrapped package under one arm. Do you recognize him? Gregory asked, glancing at Maya. She stepped closer, peered at the screen. Her face went pale. Gregory noticed immediately. You know him? Her voice was tight. His name's Derek. He used to be my landlord. Used to be? He stopped being my landlord when I couldn't pay rent on time 3 months in a row. Gregory's jaw flexed. And now he's delivering packages? He's not a delivery man, Maya said. He's looking for something. Gregory moved toward the control panel. He's not getting in, but Maya caught his arm. Wait, let me see what it is. Just hand off. No invite. Gregory looked at her hand on his sleeve, then gave a tight nod. Fine, but I'll be watching. Maya walked down the front steps as the gates slid open just enough to let her through. The wind had picked up, tugging at the hem of her sweater. She hugged her arms as she approached Derek, who smiled like a man who'd already caused trouble and was hoping to cause more. Maya, he said, pulling off his sunglasses, didn't expect this place to suit you so well. Looks expensive. She ignored the bait. What do you want? I was clearing out the old mailbox. Found something addressed to you. Thought I'd be neighborly. He held out the package. It was wrapped in brown paper, no label. Maya hesitated. You open it, she said. Derek raised an eyebrow. Come on, girl. I came all this way. You open it, she repeated. With exaggerated care, he peeled back the paper. Inside was a weathered children's book, The Snowy Day, by Ezra Jack Keats. Maya's breath caught. That had been Isaiah's favorite. She hadn't seen it in years. There, Derek said, grinning. Thought it looked sentimental. Figured you'd want it. Maya stared at the book. Why are you really here, Derek? He stepped closer, dropping the charm. You still owe me 3 months' rent. I figure now that you're working for Mr. Fancy over there, you can settle up. I told you when I have it, I'll pay. You have it now, he said, eyes flicking toward the mansion. You've got yourself a rich man and a sweet gig. Don't make me come back with paperwork. Maya's jaw clenched. I'm not afraid of you. You should be, he said, leaning in. People like you don't get to hide behind gates forever. A second later, the gate buzzed. Gregory's voice crackled through the intercom. You've made your point. Get off the property. Derek raised both hands and backed toward his car. Nice catching up, Maya. She stood there, holding the book, hands shaking slightly. Gregory met her at the door. I saw everything. I'm fine, she said quickly, brushing past him. Maya. She turned. You're not fine. Her mouth trembled. He knew exactly what would get to me. That book, he stole it from my things when I moved out. Just waited for the right moment to twist the knife. Gregory exhaled. You don't owe him anything. You've given more to this house in 2 weeks than he probably has to anyone his whole life. She gave a sad smile. Thank you. But this kind of thing doesn't just disappear, Mr. Hunter. It lingers. He stepped forward. Then let it linger here, where you're not alone. She looked at him, unsure what to say. Then a small voice called from the staircase. Maya? Jacob. She turned and saw him standing in his socks. clutching a crayon in one hand. "Coming, baby," she said. As she climbed the stairs, Gregory stayed behind, picking up the brown paper Derek had dropped. Scrawled faintly on the inside was a number, a phone number, and 2 words. "Think carefully." He crushed it in his fist. That night, Maya placed the snowy day on Jacob's nightstand. He tapped the cover gently, smiling at the boy on the front. "You want me to read it?" she asked. Jacob nodded. She opened the first page. One winter morning, Peter woke up and looked out the window. Jacob leaned against her, eyes wide with wonder. Downstairs, Gregory watched the hallway monitor, the soft sound of Maya's voice barely audible. He reached for the phone, then hesitated. Instead, he opened his laptop and started a background check on Derek's name. Some debts, he thought, aren't just about money. Some debts needed to be handled differently. The next morning dawned clear, the storm having passed with the kind of clean quiet that made the world feel polished. But beneath the sunshine and blue sky, something darker lingered in the Hunter mansion. Not in the walls, but in the air tents, watchful, alert. Gregory Hunter stood at his study window, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the driveway where Derek had stood the day before. He hadn't told Maya yet, but the background check had come back overnight. Derek Tyler, 2 prior evictions, 1 small claims court suit involving harassment, and a sealed incident report tied to an altercation with a former tenant. Nothing that would land him in jail, but enough to confirm what Gregory already felt in his gut: this man was trouble. And the type of trouble that liked to linger. The door opened behind him. Mrs. Blake entered, her voice low. He called again. Gregory turned. "What did he say?" "Said he left something in the mailbox. Wants Maya to pick it up herself." She hesitated. "He's playing a game, sir." Gregory's jaw tensed. "Well, he's about to lose." Maya was sitting in the sunroom with Jacob, helping him stack colorful wooden blocks. He had taken to color matching now, quietly sorting each piece before placing it just so. Maya praised him softly with each successful pairing, a warm glow lighting her face. Gregory entered, still holding the printout of Derek's report. "Can we talk?" he asked. She looked up, alert. "Of course." She handed Jacob a small green block and followed Gregory into the hallway. He closed the door behind them. "He called again," Gregory said. Her expression didn't change. She looked tired, not surprised. "What does he want now?" "Claims he left something in the mailbox. Wants you to pick it up personally." She closed her eyes for a beat. "Of course he does. That's what he does. Makes you jump for crumbs." "You're not jumping this time," Gregory said firmly. "I'll send someone to check, or I'll go myself." "No," Maya said quietly. He blinked. "No? If you go, it gives him more power. And if I keep hiding behind you, I lose mine." Gregory stared at her. "Maya," she held up a hand. "Listen, I'm not being reckless, but I know men like Derek. They don't care about laws or logic. They care about leverage. And when they realize they're losing control of you, they push harder. This visit, this game, it's about reminding me that he can." Gregory was quiet. Then let's remind him that you're not alone." Maya smiled faintly. "That's the only reason I'm not falling apart right now." Late that afternoon, they drove together, Gregory at the wheel, Maya in the passenger seat. She was wearing a gray coat and a firm expression. She didn't tremble, didn't hesitate, but her hands stayed clenched in her lap the entire ride. The mailbox was a rusted metal cube outside her old apartment building. The complex looked even more neglected than she remembered: peeling paint, broken blinds, trash bins half full and sagging. The kind of place where dreams went to rot. Gregory parked across the street and got out with her, though he stayed back as she approached the mailbox. His phone was in his hand, security on speed dial. Maya opened the metal door slowly. Inside was a manila envelope with her name scrawled in messy black ink. She pulled it out, checked for weight, then flipped it open. Inside, a single photograph. A snapshot of her standing at the Hunter mansion gate with Jacob in her arms. She froze. Gregory saw her go still and crossed the street in seconds. "What is it?" She handed him the photo. His face darkened as he studied it. "When was this taken?" "I don't know, but that's not the point. He's showing me he's watching." "Anne." Gregory took a deep breath, his voice low and furious. This isn't just a scare tactic anymore. No, she said, eyes burning. Now it's a threat. That evening, Maya sat in Jacob's room longer than usual. He'd fallen asleep with his cheek pressed to her forearm, his little fingers tangled in her sweater. She didn't move, just watched him breathe. When Gregory knocked gently on the doorframe, she didn't look up. I filed a report, he said, with the precinct. One of my attorneys is connecting us to a private investigator. She nodded slowly. He won't stop until someone makes him. I plan to. Maya looked at him then. I'm not used to this. Protection. Gregory crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. Get used to it. Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed strong. He knows Jacob exists now. Gregory's face turned to stone. He doesn't come near my son. Ever. Good, Maya said. Because if he tries, I won't wait for the law. There was steel in her voice now, fierce, unmoving. Gregory looked at her, something almost like pride flickering in his eyes. You're not just here for Jacob, are you? He asked. She shook her head. No. I'm here because no child yours, mine, anyone's should grow up thinking love is something they have to earn. The room fell quiet again, except for the soft rustle of sheets as Jacob turned in his sleep. Gregory rose and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. I'll make sure he never comes near you again. She didn't flinch. She just whispered, don't promise it if you don't mean it. I do. She believed him. At midnight, the mansion lights were dim. Maya sat at the kitchen table with Mrs. Blake, sipping lukewarm tea. You ever deal with a man like that? Maya asked softly. Mrs. Blake gave her a long look. Once. Long time ago. I stayed quiet too long. But one day, I stopped. What happened? He stopped too, not because he changed, but because I did. Maya nodded slowly. Then she said something she hadn't said in years. I'm tired of surviving. I want to live. Mrs. Blake reached over and squeezed her hand. And you will, baby. You already are. The Hunter estate